Hello and welcome to UX Leadership by Design, the podcast by and for UX design leaders. I'm your host, Mark Baldino. This podcast is and always will be brought to you by Fuzzy Math, the user experience design consultancy that brings consumer-grade design to the UX. At Fuzzy Math, we love partnering with nascent or growing sort of design teams to ensure they have the right people in the right seats, applying the right process. So if you're in need of a partner, on your design team, please feel free to reach out. Today, we are talking to Cam Ridenour. Cam's the co-founder and chief design officer of CoNote, which is a design research synthesis tool. You can find it at conote.ai. Very cool tool. The target users are you folks who are listening to this podcast, design leaders and people looking for ways to streamline some of their design research processes. So please go check it out. And on the call today, Cam takes us through his, sort of non-traditional path into the design world, and actually for Cam, a non-traditional path into leading a software company, and becoming a co-founder and a chief design officer. Just a really interesting journey. And I think just a ton of positive vibes and encouragement along the way. And I think in this day and age, we all need lots of positive vibes and encouragement. So please give it a listen and enjoy, and thanks. Cameron, how are you?
Doing great. How are you doing?
I am doing well. Thank you very, very much for joining us on the podcast. I think I checked this before. Cameron's is all good. It doesn't matter.
Either's fine.
All right, perfect. Well, thanks for joining me on the podcast. Super excited for our conversation. I know you have a really interesting background, kind of into design and into UX, and then in kind of your current role as a co-founder and chief design officer of a startup. I want to get into all of those details, but can you give the audience just a sense of your background? What's the history been over the past several years to where you are now?
Yeah. And also before I answer that question, thank you also for having me on. Pleasure. It's been quite the journey just overall. I know it started way back in 2010. No, sorry, 2006. Yeah. So,
okay.
Anyways, let me back up a second. I'm a graphic designer by trade. I was like, let me say that first. Yeah, so, that makes sense. So my career has been mostly in marketing and advertising, doing graphic design work across all types of different mediums and things like that. But it all started back then when I went to college. At the time, of course, I think many people, they don't really know what they want to do. I think they have an idea. At one time, I was going to be a doctor, and that was my thing. But
yep.
It wasn't for me. So going to the college, to figure out what I'm going to do, I was just like, I don't know. I like video games, I guess. Maybe I'll do that. And then going through the tour, they were just like, oh, well, that's graphic design, which of course that is not what that is at all.
Yeah.
But I was just like, sure, sounds great. Sign me up. Thankfully, I feel like this has been a part of my career and just life in general, where everything just kind of works out, thankfully, like that, where I ended up being meant to do this anyways. As I realized later, when I was in grade school, I would draw and sketch literally ads. When Tony Hawk's Pro Skater came out, all the skateboard magazines,
yep.
I would copy and be like, all right, I guess I'm gonna design my own shoe ad. And I would have my notebook where it'd be my magazine.
So not even traditional art, what I would kind of more traditional art. This is actually kind of marketing and advertising. You were doing art that was around almost product placement.
Right. Yeah. Because I was getting video game magazines and the art within Game Informer, PlayStation Magazine, and skateboard magazines, and the way that they, put their ads together, which at the time I think was revolutionary. No one was putting ads together like that during that time period. What spoke to me. Clearly I was copying it. So I ended up, I majored in art. So I have an art degree, concentration in graphic design. So just honed my art skills in that, minored in art history. So just grew, was able to grow my love for art and grow with my understanding of what that could even be at my college, which was Anderson University in Anderson, South Carolina, is where I went. And then from there, I got a job at a small agency called Zlo in Greenville, South Carolina. Worked there for a couple of years, just, the typical junior or entry level designer stuff, doing social media ads, emails, you know, making mistakes, doing terrible ideas, you know, as it goes. Then from there, I moved on and went in-house and was doing, it was for Delta Apparel. They own Salt Life, which would be the big one that a lot of people would know, and Sophie. So if you're familiar with Sophie shorts, where like the cheerleader shorts where you roll the tops over. So they own them. So we ended up doing website stuff, work for them, social media stuff, email design, and always leading up to this point too, up until then, right? Like website design was something that like I was taught that. I enjoyed it. I really liked it. I liked that more than the other things. It was just the interactivity that comes along with that, the digital component, which I think also comes my love and passion for that definitely comes from playing video games. I've seen, there's no telling how many UIs I've seen now in my life, but so I think like, you know, the beginning of not really knowing what UI or UX, you know, was at the time, really, I think it was pretty early, you know, like we knew that, you know, like I remember that book, Don't Make Me Think, which is very much just like about, you know, all of those patterns and user experience and building that right interface, making the right choices for like what, you know, you're trying to get the user to do. So like really started to hone my skills on that, but not knowing that I was essentially doing like UI, UX work in a sense. So going from there, then I moved on to an agency here in DC. Been there for, it was like 5 years I was there. And then that was just like all kinds of stuff. And that was when my career definitely like took off, where I was doing a lot bigger things. I, you know, started to manage a team, design team there at a certain point. Was a director. We worked on same stuff, website stuff, all the way to social media, like all the marketing, all the, you know, print ads, bus ads. And we also worked on a environmental design for ACLU. It was for their 100-year, it was a tour. So it went from LA all the way across the country, ended in New York City where they're headquartered. So that was quite the experience, trying to get all of that together, all the components for that. And then also I'd never done environmental design. So then I'm also having to think and take, right, everything that I've learned about, even at that point, right, I haven't taken any UX classes like specifically, right, but I just know, right, all right, if I'm someone and I'm walking through this, like what is it that I want them to feel? What is it that I want them to see? How does this need to, right, if they touch it, what's the texture or, you know, the textile nature of it, which is definitely a way that I approach like everything that I design. That was how I was taught at my university. Very much to think about the user.
The user, what's their response to this? When you're thinking about like print design or advertisements, marketing design, I mean, as you said, it's very different from experiential, but you still are able to draw a thread between those two.
Yeah. I think that that was like the greatest thing that I believe I was taught there, and the way that they structure things. It was very much, I mean, you know, my professors are amazing. I still keep up with a couple of them to this day. Everything that it was always based on the user, no matter what it was. So like, that's the kind of philosophy that I've always taken with me, no matter what it is. And then like into my role now, from that into like where I am doing like specifically UI UX work for our product, CoNote, like it's always about the user. It doesn't matter what it is. Like it could be, you know, it's anything, right? Like to me, everything is art. Doesn't matter what it is. It's designed for a purpose. Could be functional, could not be functional, right? But that's the point. Like that's all a part of it. It's always for someone, and you should always be doing some type of research to figure out, right, like why is this not working? Why is this working, right? What can I do to expand on that? And we're very much just taught that, no matter what it is.
So even as you mentioned, if I'm doing a marketing piece, if I'm doing a promotional piece and sort of the advertising space, if I'm designing something that's actually experiential, like to work for the ACLU, or what you're working on now, which is a tool, and I'd love to get into that in a minute, kind of what CoNote is up to, because it is its audience is the same audience as the podcast. It's sort of by and for UX designers. So that's really, really cool. But you that sort of common thread of being user-centered, user-focused in terms of a design approach is common amongst those. Because I do think there's people who think of fine art, maybe consider less about the user. It's sometimes more about the artist. Now, it can be very experiential, but some people sort of separate those two, and they think like of fine art, or marketing is really about selling, right? I'm trying to, there's an advertising component to this. I'm trying to sell a product. And then I think UX designers get very protective of their space. No, products are where we design digital products or experiential products, but we're very different from the marketing folks. We're very different from fine arts. Like, people like to draw lines in their work. I think sometimes because it makes it feel comfortable. I can own this, or I'm part of this. But you seem to have both. You've experience across a bunch of these mediums and verticals, and it sounds like you're able to still maintain kind of a user-centered focus. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, I think so. And even to me, with like bringing in like fine art, and to me, those lines are almost either it's like blurred or non-existent to me, because like even when I am like, if you're designing a product, right, at the end of the day, like someone's got to buy it. Like it has to be marketable, like it has to be usable, like, right. If it's not usable, then it's not marketable, right? Like, to me, that stuff goes like hand in hand, especially like with that. And like, how do you walk a user through the process to like get them to like love it, right? To make them want to buy it. Like, that's like, to me, all of this stuff is really important, and it's just like interconnected. Yeah, like fine art definitely is one of those things, but then like once you release it out in the world, like you could argue that like at that point, right, the meaning, it leaves the intention is now with everyone else. That's how you get like, things being misinterpreted, like Fight Club or American Psycho,
right?
as like movies. But
Can you tell me more about what you might miss if you do create a separation between the functionality of a product and actually not focused on that translation between I love using this, I'm willing to pay for it? Like, some people will separate those, and they're really just focused on the user as they're using it, but they're not thinking about how to create a following for it, how to create, an intense sort of like passion for it, and actually how that translates to the commercial aspects of it. And I know in your role as co-founder and chief design officer, you have to balance all of those. So what happens when people sort of separate those out and just think about the user, or maybe just think about the financial components?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it starts to suffer in one way or another. It's like, I mean, it's such a hard balance to strike too, within those, to get it right, which, I mean, that's the whole, like the iterative process where you're like, always, it's never perfect. Right. But like this is like a tough question to answer. It's like it just feels like it's more nebulous. Like it's just like, it's hard. Like, I'm trying to like find exactly how to how to answer.
Well, what advice would you give a designer who tells you that they shouldn't be worried about the commercial aspects and whether somebody wants to buy it? They really want to focus on the usability of the product, and they're not concerned about marketing, advertising. Maybe some folks who are listening fall into that camp and feel really strongly about it. And maybe there's not a lot of people out there, but I do think some people get kind of be black and white in their thinking. But like, what suffers, or what advice would you give if somebody's like, no, I just really want to focus on the usability of this product. I don't care if somebody wants to pay for it.
I mean, I think that if that's your purpose, I mean, that's like getting at, like, if you don't care that anyone, like, that you want to sell it or want anyone to buy it, then that's one thing, right? If you only want to focus on that. But at the same time, it's just how do you, I mean, it's just like that's the difference between making something that you want to just give away for free, I guess, and something that you want to try and make revenue from. Like, neither is right or wrong.
Fair.
I think that both need to be viable. And if it's a good product, truly good product, right, that you're trying to build, you want it to be like commercially viable, right? I would want people to use it. Like, I want people to like, right. In an ideal world, sure, I would love to give away all this stuff for free.
Sure.
But um, yeah, I think that yeah, that's why I think I'm having a little trouble. Like, it's not I'm having trouble answering it. It's just that if your intention is to only focus on the user and you're not concerned with, I'm not saying that can't work. It could work,
Yeah.
right? If you're building the best product, available. But, I think that when you're working on a team, once it gets to a certain amount, like the separate teams, like sales they need stuff to do their job. Like stakeholders need what they need to do their job. And if you're only focused on doing what you think is best for the user only and not like including everyone, like you're pushing everyone else out, right?
Yeah.
And then they're not able to do like their jobs and what they need. Because at the same time, some like users go to the sales and they tell them things, right? Sales hears stuff that they then try to relay to UX designers, UI designers, and a lot of times they're just like, well, you don't know, or, like that's just different. How are
Yep.
like I need more data points, right? When it needs to just be like a cohesive unit together. So
Yeah.
I think in
No,
that sense, it does make sense. Like,
and I think the
sorry, go ahead.
problem. No, I was going to say I think the problem. I'm going to guess the problem. I haven't. I mean, I run a business now, but it's a consultancy. It's very different than kind of running a software company like you are. But the problem and a startup, like those problems are really acute, right? Like your team's probably not. I'll say this. I think a lot of people work at organizations where there is a big enough team that there can be separation kind of between sales and marketing and business and design and development. Maybe shouldn't be, but people are in their different spaces, and there's almost there's key translators. There's people who translate the message from sales and business down to product and product to design and product to engineering and design to engineering. And there seem to be a few sort of key translators. But when, at least I understand about your business now, it's a little bit smaller. Like you don't have those folks. So
Yeah.
I think, and I'd love to hear, like you need people who work on your team that are probably wearing a lot of hats, and they do have to think about,
Yeah.
yes, this is a great feature, but are we going to make money? Or we could design it this way, but does that make it more desirable from a financial perspective?
Right.
I don't know if I'm describing the problem exactly correctly, but like, what are some of those balances or trade-offs that specifically in a startup, in a software startup, that your design team, your business team, like sales team, marketing team, what are some of the trade-offs you all are thinking through as you're building out your product?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is, especially now, it's like getting the product to where we want it to be, like what our version of V1 is. And minimizing technical debt as much as possible, because we have an assumption, right? It's always just like hypothesis based with all the, like, we think that this will work, right? And then we'll get like customers. So as we move along, we make small incremental adjustments, but we keep like our North Star. We're like, but overall, this is where we're going. And right now it's like, we can't deviate into like a hard left turn because like, we talked to 7 people and 3 of them said, whatever. And
Right.
then like, we can't just like turn
Right.
for 3 people. Right. So yeah, I think it's just, it's making sure that we are always aligned, and we do check-ins to make sure that we're aligned, right? Like, this is where we're going, like, because we'll come up and think of like really cool features that like we want to add, but then it's just like, we should do that. Like, that'd be so cool. And it's just like, well, let's pump the brakes a little bit. Right. It's like, we need to build the foundation of where we're going. Cause like I designed it, when I put it all together and designed it like with that in mind, right? Like the layout and the navigation is the way that it is because I know that we're going to be adding stuff to it over time. So it's planning ahead as much as possible, but while also being honest with ourselves that we will have to just completely uproot some things. And it's just like, this just doesn't work. We tried it. We've interviewed for it. At the time, it seemed like it was going to, but it's not. But we're just move fast, break stuff, just like get it out there.
Yeah. I mean, maybe now is a good time. I'd love for you to give folks just a little bit of a background on the product, why you guys started, the company. I think it's about a year old, to sort of to build it. And I don't know if it'll align with the North Star, but you mentioned that. I think it's a really interesting point for people as designers and design leaders. Like, yeah, we could vary back and forth, but there's a North Star we're pointing towards, and we're only going to vary a little bit. We're going to kind of bring it towards that North Star. I don't know if you can share that North Star with the team, but we'd just love to understand, like, how did the product come about? What are you guys up to? What are you doing at CoNote?
Yeah, absolutely. I can share that. So at CoNote, we are a product that's focused on the UX designer, UX researcher, just to get through the very painful part of research, which is like going back in, going through all those user interviews after you've already taken them, right, to find all those common threads. Like, okay, this person said this person said that. Like, how are these linked? How do I, right? Like the whole thing with the sticky notes, every interview, like trying to move everything around and bring it all together. Hence that's what the logo is based on. That and finding the diamond in the rough. So it's about that. And that's our North Star, is about what can we do to make that process easier? Not concerned with taking your process or like the general UX process and just making it digital, right? There's a bunch of people already doing that. I think that the next thing is like, what can we do to just make that entire process a lot easier? And sure, like give you the like tools that you need to, go from there. But like what's the next evolution of what UX research can be, right? So, and of course, right, we are using AI, but within that, what it does is it takes all of your user interviews, it transcribes them for you, and then the AI engine goes through and finds all those common threads, all those like commonalities between every interview, and then brings it together for you. Our next release is really exciting. It's action items. So it comes in and it tells you like a list of 5 things. It's like, this is what we heard from this. Like, go and like do, let's see, like what was some ones that I just saw the other day, like testing it. So yeah, we also run our interviews through.
I was going to say, so you're doing eat your own dog food. You're doing interviews. Yeah. Full disclosure, folks who are listening, I actually was part of a user interview. I only had 30 minutes, but talked to one of your researchers. You're then taking my data or the other folks' data and running it through your platform as a way to test it out and probably improve it, right?
Yeah. It's all self-contained within our own workspace. Yeah. So like what we do is we take, right. So like we're using it, and then our researcher is giving us feedback. So we're getting feedback from ourselves. Like with me using it, I get annoyed by things that I designed, and I'm just like, well, I got to change that. Like the unforeseen circumstances. But yeah, so it gives you action items, like very actionable, like this, like improve the UI in this section, or like talk more about, like, I'm trying to remember the exact things it said, but I'm doing it a disservice right now.
No, that's okay. That's okay. I'm putting you on the spot. Is there an example you can share of things you all? It's kind of a weird meta question, and so say no if there's not an example. But you were just talking about there being a North Star, and you're trying to guide your team on that North Star for the product, right? You think your team believes these are the things that are going to make the product the most successful, both from a user perspective and from a business perspective. So actually being able to sell the product. And maybe you found some stuff, you heard it from 3 people, or there was an instance. Was there anything that like your tool came back with, and or a recommendation or a finding, and it was like it didn't actually line up with that North Star? Because I think you're describing a very acute problem for designers and design researchers, which is like, yeah, we kind of understand what the business wants. We maybe understand what the North Star is. We know what's going to make this product successful from a financial perspective. We talked to these people. It kind of told us something differently. They really want it. Hey, if you don't integrate with Miro, we're not using it. Like that sort of stuff. And I think that could really, like, teams can get totally unfocused and they can really, they've done research, so they feel strongly in talking to users, but it also kind of can at times be a distraction. Are there any examples that you've seen in the development of the product where it's like the team kind of wanted to go a little bit sideways and you had to steer them back?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's literally a similar example to what you just said. It wasn't exactly Miro, but it's like other things, right? Because we're in the mode now, like we're a startup, right? We we want users, we want people to use it, we want people to buy it, right? So it's, well, this user said that if we had this, then they'll do it. This user said if we had this, then they'll do it, right? It's just, it's hard to, you can't just like go wherever that is. It's just you have to stay on the path. It's just like, because that happens all the time. My previous job before this one, we were building a product, and it was a lot of that kind of thing where like a stakeholder would come in a lot and be like, well, this person says if we do this, then they'll buy it. And then we would shift, and then we would do it. And then so they would talk to someone else, and then they'd be like, well, if I had this and work this way, then they'll buy it. Like right now they'll buy it. Right. So we shift and we do that. And then all that did was just create a lot of technical debt. And also frustration within the team. So it does way more harm than good to do that. It's hard to know when to pivot and to know what feedback you're getting is actually valuable. But I think it's just like, if you just keep to your, like, what is the thing that you want to do? Does this get you there? Right? Not, is this going to get me quick money now? Right? It's like long-term, I think, is what it's about, not short-term gains. Because if you compromise your vision early, then, like, what are you going to be left with at the end of the day?
Right. So do you steer your team through discussion back to, this is our North Star, this is where we're heading. Hey, what we heard was valuable, but in the short term, it's too much of a pivot. Like that's the conversations you're having as a founder, chief design officer.
Yeah. And we have it amongst ourselves. And this is not even to say that like I'm always right and I always keep that in mind. Of course, I think of stuff too. And I'm just like, yeah, but wouldn't this be cool? And then like my other co-founders will like reel me in. Right. So it's very much, like we are, it's good that there's like, and we all have different mindsets in the way that we think about stuff. So I'm like the designer, Nisha Ayers, our CTO, and she's like in the data science, the technical side. And then James Frisha is our CEO. So he handles like more, me and him overlap with marketing and things like that, but he handles like more the business side and sales. So like we're getting we're getting the three perspectives that we need to keep us all in check. So it works great. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's great. So I want to step back a little bit just in think of terms of your journey, types of design you've done, but like at some point you made a decision to not just be an individual contributor as a designer, but to start a company, and not only start a company, but start a product company. Like, was there a point where you felt ready to do that? Or like, yes, my experience has given me, I've checked all the boxes, I'm ready to go. Was it a little bit more of a natural progression? Like, how did you find yourself in this role, which is, I think, a pretty big shift from design leader, individual contributor in-house or at an agency to, okay, no, I'm going to be a co-founder, chief design officer at a product company. Like, what was that shift like for you?
Yeah. It's been, there's been some growing pains there. I think that it makes sense to me now. I definitely have very much like an attitude of, or have always kind of had one where I'm like, okay, well, where like, I'm going to do it my way, where I was like, the way that we're doing this doesn't make sense. So like, I'm just going to like, just figure it out. And like, we're going to do it this way, because I think this makes more sense. So like, it's been natural, and that's like, I'm excited to be able to like build a company and a culture of like what I've always wanted to work at.
Yep.
But, like shifting into this it's been great. It hasn't been easy. I can't imagine it's ever easy. I think some people would be lying to themselves if they said that it is. I don't know, maybe some people are just built different, but I've got great co-founders that are very supportive. And we all help each other and get the best out of each other. So yeah, I think that it's, like, are you ever ready to start a business? Like, I don't know, maybe not, because it's a lot more stress and headache comes with that. A lot more responsibility, because not only am I responsible for myself, I'm responsible for them. They depend on me. I depend on them, Yeah.
That's great. I mean,
no. I answer.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the honesty there, that it's not always like super clear, or the path isn't always clear forward, but you want to try something new. mean, do you have advice for people? Because you have kind of
Yeah.
you have a non-traditional journey into design leadership. Like, do you have any advice for people who are designers now and want to be design leaders, or are thinking about starting a company, like, and they're not sure when the right time is, or they feel like I don't have the right background to do this, which I think is, people are kind of feel a little bit like imposters at times. Like, what's your advice to those folks?
I think anyone can do this. You know, I think that everyone feels like an imposter. I tell myself that all the time. Like, I think it doesn't matter who you are. We all have the same feelings, and we all have the same fears, the same anxieties, right? Some people just are better at covering that up, which, that tells me that, like, we're all capable. We're all, like, able to do this. Right. Some things just may be harder than others, right? Like doing admin work, dude, like, I don't want to do it. Find you someone that likes doing it. Like, I don't, that'd be really hard, but yeah, like, it's, you want to find people that support you, that are always there to help. And I mean, yeah, like, I can't reiterate enough. Like, it's out there, like, go do it. Right. Like, you see people do it all the time. Now, granted, this is like very pie in the sky positivity, which is like, like, I am a very positive person, but I understand that there are a lot of factors that make it difficult. And I am very fortunate with a lot of different aspects and how, like, my career has, like, gone. I've been very fortunate, very lucky in a lot of ways. So that part is not lost on me. I do want to say that and point that out. But right, it is very much out there. Yeah, if you got a good idea, a passion, strong, will do it. Go for it.
Yeah, that's great. Listen,
Like, we're all
I
out
think
here
we can,
just anxious as hell.
we all are, amen to that. Right. And we do need a little bit of positivity. It's funny. Like, that message might feel like, oh, this feels pie in the sky or too positive, but, like, there's a lot of anxiety in the world. There's a lot of anxiety around kind of the broader economic system. I feel like people need some positivity. And yes, even in these kind of challenging conditions, you can start up a business. You can find a group of people to support you. There are resources out there. Take a shot. And while, yeah, I started a business as well, very fortunate, was lucky in a lot of ways. I think that's important to acknowledge. There's also a level of kind of effort and push to get something started and off the ground. And you kind of have to have a positive approach, Cam. So I just want to say, thank you for sharing that advice, because it may sound simple, but I think it's actually not said enough to folks out there that in the back of their mind are thinking about something they could be doing a little bit differently, and are sort of reserved and feel like they should hold themselves back. So I'm all for positivity. I'm all for pushing people to take a little bit of a chance and try something if they feel kind of passionate about it and they feel like they have, as you said, like the right or a good idea. And we're just about at time, but I know people can find you at CoNote, which is CoNote.ai, but where else can folks find and connect with you online, Cam?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Just like you said, CoNote.ai, CONOTE.ai. The app is live. You can use it now. We're always looking for users, for friends. Come be a CoNote friend. Yeah. And we're available on LinkedIn. You can find me, Cameron Ridenour. Search my name. You'll see me.
Awesome.
It's this face.
Awesome. Well, I'll include.
If you're listening, just imagine.
Yeah, of course. I'll include a link to CoNote for sure in, like, the notes, and then I'll include a link to your LinkedIn profile. It's awesome that the tool's out there. I know I have some folks at Fuzzy Math who want to give it a try. So we're going to try to be some sort of beta testers for you. But it sounds like a general call. Folks, head there. If you're a UX designer, UX researcher, and you want to leverage the power of AI to help with a really difficult part, which is going from a ton of notes in an organization to some action items and takeaways, it just sounds like a really valuable tool. I want to be clear, this isn't a paid spot for Cam. We happen to be talking just about UX design leadership, and Cam happens to run a company that I think a lot of folks that are listeners could could utilize their tool. So Cam, just want to say thank you again for joining us on the podcast. Super interesting conversation about your journey and the company you've recently launched. Really looking forward to kind of your future success. So thanks very much for your time and energy today.
Great. Thank you so much. Thanks for everyone listening. Keep on rocking in the free world, man.
Right on. All right. Thanks, Cam. Have a good one.